If Google's hindered here and they're slow to market with it, or it becomes a PR nightmare, who knows? It's going to let the door open for other competitors to slip in there. So, some interesting news to keep an eye on there. Also, real quick, if you are a Mac user, there's been this Mac Defender kind of malware going around that really isn't causing any problems, but it's just very annoying. It is basically the way Mac Defender works. It kind of sneaks into it can sneak into your system, but it really doesn't spread out. But anyway, Apple's coming out with some updates, and that should take care of that. So even though, like I've mentioned before, Apples are virtually at this point immune to any sort of malicious software, this Mac Defender kind of takes it a little step up than any other Trojans that have been out there for the Mac. But the good news is for Mac users, once Apple puts out a patch for it, it's virtually going to become a non-issue again. So kind of a difference between the world that Windows users live in, where they're constantly under bombardment by any number of malicious softwares, and the Apple Mac users, where this little annoying piece of software created some headlines because it kind of was the only virus news that Apple has had in over 10 years. So we'll keep an eye on this to see if that goes anywhere, but hopefully now that Apple has identified the minor security hole that allowed the software to kind of take hold a little bit, they'll be able to, we won't have to worry about it again anymore. So anyway, we're due for a break, so when I come back, we'll talk some more about the world of mobile. I'll talk about 3G versus 4G, and go over an article that CNN wrote talking about the top 10, or I should say 10, not necessarily top 10, but just 10 competitors to the iPad, and what CNN how they rank them. So anyway, again, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to call 314-714-4200 or iWatchRadio.com or iWatchRadio on Facebook. Let me know what you think, and I'll be happy to talk about it. So I'll see you right after the break.
Checks free. We got to install a microwave oven. kitchen deliveries. We got to move these refrigerators. We got to move these color That ain't working. That's the way you do it. You play the guitar on the MTV. That ain't working. That's the way you do it. Money for nothing and your chicks for free. Money for nothing. And your chicks for free. Money for nothing. Chicks for free. Look at that. Look at that.
Welcome back, everybody, to the TechSpot Show. Again, my name is Marcel Brown. If you have any comments or tech questions at all, feel free to call in 314-714-4200 or iWatchRadio.com or iWatchRadio on Facebook. A couple quick things. If you had watched my previous shows, you may have remembered my tip for not spilling water in laptops. Again, don't forget, if you're going to have water or liquids around your laptop, have a bottle that can close so that it doesn't spill. Remember that. Last week I gave a tip about running Windows XP on Macintosh computers. I have to change that tip a little bit because we just discovered, in fact last week, ironically after I had broadcast this tip, that all the recently released Mac computers actually no longer support Windows XP. Apparently the newer components just simply don't have Windows XP drivers for them anymore, so Apple had to drop Windows XP support from all the latest generation of the MacBooks and MacBook Pros and iMacs, although I think the white MacBook may still support Windows XP, but the MacBook Airs, MacBook Pros, and the new iMacs no longer support Windows XP. So if you still need to run Windows XP, I believe the the Mac Mini still supports Windows XP, as possibly the white MacBook, or previous generation models of Macs still support Windows XP. So, unfortunately, that just means it's becoming extraordinarily difficult to still run Windows XP at all if you still need it. So, but certainly, if you have any questions on that, on how to run Windows XP, there are still some options, mostly virtual machine options, that will allow you to run Windows XP on newer machines, whether they're PCs or Macs. And again, I'd be certainly happy to talk more in detail with you if you have that question. So anyway, let's talk about wireless networks. Last week I talked about Wi-Fi, but this week let's talk about cellular wireless networks, or wide area networks. Basically, your cell phone and data from your cell phone. Currently, the predominant standard right now in wireless cellular networks is what is generally called the 3G network. And just so you know, basically a 3G network stands for third generation, and that's what the G stands for, it's generation. So most carriers are on their third generation of digital wireless technology. The first generation didn't really have any data. The second generation was more things like what you call like the edge networks, the 2G networks, and then obviously now 3G. If you've been paying attention at all to mainstream commercials and that, you will have started seeing advertisements about 4G networks from companies like Sprint. Sprint was pretty much the first one to have a working 4G network out there. Verizon with their LTE. AT&T is talking about a 4G as well. Also, LTE is the technology called. And interestingly enough, T-Mobile talking about their 4G network, which is a little bit of a misnomer, because let me explain something. Basically, the way most industry talks about generation, 3G versus 4G, is a specific kind of newer technology comes out that enables a whole different range of features or new services, basically. So in going from 3G to 4G, it is a whole new technology. On the Sprint side, they called it WiMAX technology. On AT&T and Verizon, they're calling it LTE technology, which is a different technology than their existing 3G technologies, which are either called CDMA for Verizon and Sprint or GSM for AT&T and most of the rest of the world, actually. So the technologies are different. They're evolving. T-Mobile, and just to give you a little background, there's basically three main players in the United States. There's Verizon, which is generally considered the largest. AT&T follows them up in second place, so to speak, and then Sprint. These are the three major nationwide carriers. And then T-Mobile is a nationwide carrier, but they're kind of considered almost a smaller, second-class carrier to the other big three. And there are some other smaller regional ones like U.S. Cellular and such that are considered large regional carriers. But of the national carriers, you've got the big three, and then you've got T-Mobile, the little guy basically there. So T-Mobile's been running commercials about how they have the largest 4G network in the country, and people have to kind of wonder, it's like, how did little T-Mobile, the fourth place carrier, get a 4G network and can claim that they're the largest 4G network? Well, it's because they played a little trick with words. What they call their 4G network, most other carriers still consider a 3G technology. To some extent, they're calling it 3G plus or 3.5G, as in 3.5G, to signify that, yes, what T-Mobile is pushing out is better than most existing 3G networks, but it's still a 3G technology. It's not a true 4G technology like AT&T and Verizon and Sprint are deploying and pushing out right now. So a lot of the other competitors are calling foul on T-Mobile's marketing of a 4G network. Yes, it's faster than 3G, but it's not truly a 4G network. So again, and T-Mobile claims, oh, it's different enough, it's significantly faster than 3G, so we're going to go ahead and call it 4G. Well, that's up to them. It may get them some benefit for the short term. Who knows for sure if people pay attention enough to that. But it's probably going to hurt them later when all of a sudden Verizon and AT&T, when their 4G networks are significantly faster than T-Mobile's 4G networks, what's that going to say? What's the customer perception going to be then at that point? And then what's T-Mobile going to do when they upgrade to 4G, which a true 4G networks? What are they going to call it then? Are they going to still call it 4G network? Or are they going to call it 4G plus and continue to confuse people? So just be aware of that what T-Mobile calls 4G is not exactly what the rest of the industry calls 4G. So just, buyer beware, do with it as you will. Yes, it is faster than their 3G, but is it truly a 4G? Not exactly. So be aware of that. So really, what is the difference between 3G and 4G? As from a very simple perspective, it is just faster. It's a newer network. It's faster. It's going to provide true broadband-like speeds. And when I say broadband, I'm talking like standard cable or DSL type services. Those types of speeds in the 3 to 10 megabit range. It's going to provide those type of speeds wirelessly to mobile devices, or even to homes that can't get broadband. They can't get cable or DSL. They can get 4G networks beamed to their home, basically pick it up wirelessly, so they can have internet, high-speed broadband internet access that we're mostly used to today. So the significance, though, is that in the jump from 3G to 4G, we're going to see a great expansion of wireless capabilities through the internet. Right now, with most 3G services, you can get fairly decent speeds. You can do stuff like streaming video and browse the web relatively quickly and do a lot of nice things that you couldn't really do very well with a 2G network. So going from 2G to 3G was a pretty significant step up. But where 3G lacks right now is the ability to consistently do things like voice over IP services, which is basically using the phone over the internet, so to speak. So turning a computer or turning a handheld device into an internet phone, so to speak. So the voice gets turned into data that's sent over the internet rather than your voice going over a dedicated voice line or voice